How many of you listening right now are so concerned about putting everybody else's needs in front of you that you feel like, oh my God, I have nothing left for me, right? And there are many reasons that you do that, and we're going to unbox them, because the reality is you must be your first priority over your family, over your friends, over your job, over your spouse. So I guess they're family too. And you might be struggling to do that. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Let's learn all about self-prioritization.
Check it out.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Positivity Xperience. It is your girl, Lori, and man, am I excited for this topic. I'm excited for all the topics. I have all my topics laid out for next year for you guys. And feel free, by the way, to just kind of reach out on my socials, on my Instagram, official Lori Wheeler, go into my DMs, drop down some topics that maybe you'd like for me to cover, or even go deeper in what we've already covered. Because, I like to plan it out. So I have this all planned out strategy-wise. And this, though, is very important, because this is important at any day of the week, any time of the year. And it's so, so important. And listen, I've been there too. This isn't like every day I just kind of woke up at 15, 16 years old and was like, you know what? I deserve to be my own priority. No, actually quite opposite. It was very much like anytime you did anything for yourself, it was almost like, well, that's for you. No, you got to put everybody else in front of you. And this becomes a problem, and it becomes a very learned behavior, right? So what I'm going to do today is scientifically, psychologically, all of these things, is give you the reasons that you're doing that. And then over on Patreon, if that is your jam, we are going to expand on the topic, and there's going to be a worksheet that's going to give you actionable items that you can start changing it out. So if that is your jam, feel free to join me over on Patreon, patreon.com/the Positivity Xperience, or you can just click the link anywhere that you're getting this podcast right now. So let's talk about it, because I want you to understand a little bit about why, before I go into the why you're doing it. I want to talk to you about why it's imperatively important that you are your priority over everybody. Okay? Because think about what I just said in the trailer in the beginning, was how many of you feel as though you're just exhausted by just everything else. I mean, listen, there are things in this world that we have to do. Work is one, make money is another. I understand that. There are certain things that are important, but they cannot be your first priority, right? So, nobody is just going to pay me just for being like, hey girl, you're just cool. I'm going to just pay you. No, I have to work for what I have to do. So I tailor my day is the morning is my time, early in the morning. I'll play pickleball with my friend. Sometimes I'll work out, or, I'll do something else. Of course, I'm always going to meditate. I'm always going to do the journals. This is a standard before I tackle the entire day, because if I'm not whole, then I can't be good for anybody else. So you have to understand that a self-prioritization is imperative for you. And it makes every relationship that you have and every person that you interact with that you do have to have some level of bandwidth with, it literally makes you a better person for them because you're a better person for yourself. All right. So that's kind of the concept behind it. So let's talk to why you struggle with doing this. Well, I just told you. So social conditioning is absolutely one. So think about this from a really little age, and I'll speak on myself, and I know a lot of my clients have gone through this too, but from a really teeny tiny age, you're taught that putting others is this big virtue. And then it's reinforced, right? So if it's if you're prioritizing the family needs or accommodating your friends, and the social conditioning piece of it, it leads us to believe that our worth, right? Our worth is tied to how well we meet the expectations of other people. Okay, so you really hear that, right? Oh, these are my needs. And you can see a cycle of this, right? As a child, you just are hey, people are telling me I'm great and I'm loved. Well, let me do more of that, right? As a child, you don't have, your frontal lobe isn't fully formed. All of these things aren't really in full form. So what happens is that you adopt that as factual, right? I have to put everybody else as a priority and put myself way behind the eight ball, because I got to make sure they're taken care of. And by them being taken care of, I know that I have a level of worth, right? So, growing up, you might have been praised for selflessness, right? Reinforcing what that idea is. Like, oh, it's so commendable. It's so commendable how you gave up your entire career to move cross country and do blank. Okay, if that's what you wanted to do. But social conditioning can become very problematic, and it's a huge, huge layer to your lack of self-prioritization, right? Because, for me, you guys know, I grew up in an extremely dysfunctional family, like most people listening, very dysfunctional, also had a little bit of a level of religious trauma with that. So that was even harder for me because the religious side of it was like, you must always put all these people first, and, your spouse is first, and you must obey your spouse. Oh gosh, no, we're not doing that game. But what happens is it really does kind of start to mess with your mind a little bit, because you're like, well, this is what I'm supposed to do, right? Because again, at a young age, you have no idea. So the beautiful thing is now you can rewrite these storylines. I'm going to tell you ahead of time, people are not going to love that. Right? People are not going to love it. They're going to make those sort of passive aggressive comments like, oh, okay. Well, I guess you just don't have time for the family now. I guess you're just worried about yourself. They're going to make, they will make these comments. Not everybody, but they will make these comments. You have to be prepared to understand that when you switched it up for them, they don't know how to respond to it. It's not your fault. It's nobody's fault. But if you have been conditioned for 55 years of your life to do something a certain way, that you do it a certain way, and now you've kind of flipped the script on them because you're going to get boundaries and you're going to put yourself as a priority, they're not going to know how to, they're not going to be like, oh girl, I'm so happy that you're like really growing. Like nobody's going to do that because they can't benefit. So you can't let that bother you, but the social conditioning is a huge piece of it. Now, and as you can see, what's going to go into this too, it also goes into your lack of self-esteem, right? So if we go to that very first one, if you're literally being kind of told without being told, because it's being demonstrated, that you will get praise if you do blank, right? Like if you do this, then, you deserve this, right? Sometimes like if it's something that I don't want you to do, but it's good for you and I don't like it, well, I'm going to now persecute you. So the fear of judgment is number 2, right? You have this big fear of judgment as being perceived as selfish. Be perceived as selfish all day long. If you got to wear a shirt that says happily selfish, then do that, right? Because people are going to look at it as selfish and they're not going to like it when they don't know how to do it. I'm serious. People judge and they get sort of like super judgy when they're like, oh, well, you shouldn't be putting yourself as a priority because they don't know how to do it. So sometimes it's out of envy, right? It's out of envy and jealousy. It isn't just out of like super judgment, but it's still judgment. You worry about how your choices are going to be viewed by society, friends, family, and it's going to override that instinct to prioritize your own needs. So here's an example of that. Okay. You might hesitate to like decline something, a work, an invite, at the risk is being seen as uncooperative at work or selfish or less dedicated in a personal or a professional setting. People, of course, are going to judge it when they don't like that you're not doing what it is that they want you to do or what you have demonstrated in the past. It isn't always about them. It isn't always about their viewpoint. Again, if you condition someone, this is why I tell you, you allow people to quote unquote overstep a boundary because they can't do it without your permission. You allow yourself to be not emotionally pulled in a million directions, but kind of, right? You do kind of allow this because you're being accessible because you don't want to come off as selfish or, better than, or whatever the case may be. But that fear of judgment, a fear of judgment is going to stop you in a lot of areas. So you have to remember that people are going to judge you regardless. I don't care how much you try. I don't care how many times you bend over backwards. And I don't care how many people that you say, I'll do whatever you need, that you will not ever meet everybody's expectations because, including for yourself, by the way, because a person can't fill that void. So the more you try to fill it and the more you're too concerned about, oh my God, I don't want to be considered selfish, all those things. Okay, FYI, that job will replace you. Not showing up to the barbecue might make people upset, but maybe you need a mental break. Maybe you just don't want to go, which is a plenty enough reason. And let them judge because they're going to do it anyway. See, you make it seem like, oh, if I do this, they're not going to judge me. They're still going to judge you. You're going to be judged for something. Something you said, something you did, something you wore. Okay. Now, of course, this kind of goes into that religious trauma that I said that I had, but the cultural expectations too, right? Because your cultural norms and expectations can play a significant role in shaping your own priorities. So if there's like a collective well-being over individual needs, well, then fostering that mindset of like, well, I'm allowed to still be a kind human and still dedicate my time to someone, but I've got to make sure that I have the bandwidth first and that my needs are met by me first. Okay? Because putting your personal desires above family expectations are going to be met with guilt and disapproval. They're going to try to guilt you and disapproval. Like, oh my God, I can't believe you're going to do that. What do you mean? You're taking a cruise during Christmas? Well, why would you do that? The whole family is getting together. Well, I'll see you when I get back. See, people aren't going to love it. So this cultural sort of norms, what you're seeing and again, how you were raised and what you grew up with, no one's telling you not to be kind. I'm not asking you not to be there for people. I'm telling you, you got to be there for yourself first. And you may not even know right now what that even looks like, right? So again, that's why that worksheet's important, but you might not even know what that is. You might say like, oh my God, well, I would like to go maybe to the gym in the morning, or maybe I would like to go walking in the morning before everybody gets up. Oh, but I'm so tired. I don't want to get up. Okay, well, listen, now you're going to have to tell yourself, are you going to keep making excuses? Are you going to keep making excuses? I'm tired. Okay. What's important to you? Are you important to you? Sure, the sleep's important. Sure, that rest is important. But aren't you important to you? Because if you're not, then that's a whole different ballgame. That's a whole different conversation to be had on this podcast. All right. If you're not important to you, seriously, everybody focuses so much on being important to people, being a priority to them. What about you? You are 1,000,000% allowed. And how do you even know what you like? How do you know what makes you feel good? If in fact, you're not doing anything to know for yourself. If you're giving somebody else, if you're saying, I've got to be there for all these people, they'll give me validation, and that validation makes me feel good about myself, no, absolutely not. You need to book a session with me like 5 minutes ago. But we know why, right? We're just looking at the why. Don't judge yourself. Don't try to overanalyze it. No. Now, this one is kind of big. This next one's kind of big. Number 4, and that is emotional guilt. All right. You have got to remember, and people will manipulate you till the high heavens. And they don't even necessarily know that they're doing it. Like they're doing it, but it's sometimes covert and they don't even realize it. Like they're kind of dumping that sort of guilt trip on you on like, well, how could you not show up? And so feelings of your guilt, a person cannot make you feel guilty. Okay. Let's be clear. They can talk, they can say words. Okay. It can be a powerful motivator to put other people first. Okay, to put other people first. And an example, like you might feel guilty, all right, for taking time for self-care when a friend is going through some kind of a tough time. Okay, leading you to prioritize them over you. You cannot do that. That's also going to breed a lot of resentment in your friendships and in your family and in any relationship. Because as you keep prioritizing other people, and then let's say, I don't know, you're having a bad day. You're kind of struggling with something, nothing serious, but it's enough that you're kind of like, oh my God, I could really use a friend right now. And that friend goes, hey, you know what? I can talk to you tomorrow, but I'm getting ready to go for a massage. And then if you go, did she just say she's going for a massage? I'm not feeling good. Like I feel sad. Okay. You feel sad. You can't dump that on her. It's not everybody else's job. Don't dump that on them. You're allowed to feel sad, but it's not everybody's job to pause and stop because you paused and stopped. They're putting themselves as a priority. So a lot of times what you see, you get resentful, but then you're also like, oh God, they're just worried about themselves first. Yes, as they should. But you have to understand like that emotional weight of guilt can overshadow any part of your own well-being. Because you're too worried about disappointing people. We know that goes into lack of self-esteem. It goes into different things in your past. It goes into feeling like you were sort of like quote unquote made as a child to feel worse about yourself when you didn't meet somebody's needs that, by the way, they couldn't even meet themselves. So somehow or another, it's your responsibility. this becomes a guilt thing that you start taking in. You've got to get clear in allowing people to be disappointed in you, allow them to be mad because they're going to get mad, which we know anger is not a true emotion. It's an assortment of three: fear, frustration, or hurt. You're frustrated, you're hurt. So when you're angry, you're one of those three things, or all of them at the same time: fear, frustration, and hurt. But you have to remember that the guilt that you seem to carry, and then you get those passive aggressive, like it could be your mom, it could be a sister. Oh, okay. Well, okay. I'll just be sad then. Go ahead to your massage. Hope it's great. Oh, thanks. See, I'll just say thank you and I'll hang up. Right? Because now if you're expecting me to fill a void and not put myself and cancel my, I mean, of course, there's always exceptions, right? Depends on the severity of it. But if you just broke up with your boyfriend, I'm not canceling my massage, and nor should you. So guilt can only be inflicted upon you if in fact you allow that. And people will try. And some people know the buttons. Listen, we all have a level of knowing what triggers somebody, right? We don't act extra. We all have it. We know if I say this is going to bother them. If I say this. So people, you'll find people who have lack of emotional maturity will intentionally try to go below the belt and like, I'm going to hurt you because you made me feel guilty. Why are you wasting time on that? That's less time that you have to spend time on your self-prioritization, right? And again, you're also demonstrating, by the way, to children, side note, if you're like, well, I have these kids and yeah, feed them, make sure they're cool, but don't sacrifice yourself always for these children in this family, because what you're also demonstrating by putting yourself as a priority is you're actually teaching them how to put themselves as a priority. They're not going to love it. They're not going to love that they have to wait 2 hours for you to finish this hike and do all that stuff in order to go get ice cream. But so what? They'll be all right. And because remember, all they're looking at, that, especially at a young, even teenage years, is instant gratification. So 2 hours might as well be 2 decades, right? Because it's so long and it's so far. So I just want you to be clear that, by putting yourself as a priority and before you start going, well, but it's the kids and all that stuff. Okay, so by you being there at every beck and call, number one, you're not giving them any source of patience. You're telling them that it's okay, that I'm going to sacrifice myself for your fun, joy, whatever the case may be. And you got to remember that even though people don't like it, they will adapt to it. And if they have 2 choices, adapt or don't. Right? But if you're like, hey girl, do you want to do this? And it's a Monday and I pickleball from this time to this time. I mean, again, exceptions to the rules. If you're like, come on a free trip, I'm going to go. But if it's something where you're just like, oh, well, I really want you to do this. I want you to do that. No, after 10 o'clock. But you have to be willing to stick to the boundaries. Let them be disappointed. Let them be upset, which goes into the very next one, which is number 5, which is your innate desire for approval and validation. My goodness gracious, I can do a 75-hour podcast on this topic. Because here's the thing. If you are constantly seeking external validation and approval, you will continue to do so for the rest of your natural born life. Because seeking approval and validation from others, while kind of like a common human need at times, like, okay, hey, what did you think of this? That's good. Okay, great. I love that. But the problem is when you prioritize them in hopes of receiving some kind of praise, right? Like, oh my God, thank you so much. Oh my God, I love that you did that. I appreciate that so much. And or acceptance and love, and believing that your self-worth is tied to external validation. And that is literally giving every source of power away. And if you have to do something, say something, and put yourself as a secondary thing, do you want those people in your life? Now, I don't care if it's a spouse. I don't care if it's a parent. I don't care if it's a sister. I don't care if it's an adult child. You can want them there. Is that the best thing for you? Okay. Like if you're constantly putting your partner's needs ahead of your own, hoping and praying that it's going to strengthen your relationship and earn their love and admiration. Now we're going into codependency. Now we're going into attachment. If you have to put your partner's needs in front of yours, then I really want you to really reevaluate where you are in your self-prioritization, because you don't have it. All right. If you're willing to sacrifice yourself and then you're doing it and you're kind of like attaching, there's a level of manipulation that comes along on your side. not on purpose, I know, blah, blah, blah. But like, there is a level of manipulation that comes from you. Well, if I do this, they're going to love me. If I do this, they're going to see my worth. If I do this, they're going to want me to stay around. If I do this, blah, 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 blah. So there's still this weird level of like, sort of manipulation, because you're like, I'll do this and then I'll get their praise, or I'll do this and then they will appreciate the things that I'm doing. And you can't do that, because now you're attaching your own expectations upon them, right? So if you're walking around in constant expectations that if you put somebody else's needs in front of yours, I'm telling you right now, that will breed resentment. You are going to be upset. Even if you think that this person has given you extra love, do you want to constantly be doing that? Be honest with yourself. Do you want to always be putting yourself as a secondary priority? Do you? Because that's what's going to happen. A human being does not have the capability, okay, of making you whole. I know you want it so bad, because then it's easier, right? Because then sometimes you don't even have to deal with yourself. Because if you're worried too much about like, them, or, are the kids going to be great? They're 23 and you know what? I had this trip planned, but they want to do something else and they want me to watch the dog. So I'm going to cancel my trip. Why are we doing that? They can either work around your schedule, or they can because now if you're the dog watcher, or they can say, okay, I'm gonna have somebody else come in. Oh, I really only like if mom's in. Well, okay, well, this is when I'm gone. So you can change your trip or not. But you have to first, before any of the self-prioritization, you have to know that you deserve that. You have to know that it's important for you to be that person who understands that you must be your first priority. Must be. But you deserve to be. It isn't even that you must be. You deserve it. You deserve to be able to show up for yourself, because you're not doing anything but still neglecting that inner child, that little child that other people neglected. You're doing the exact same thing. The more you're not showing up for yourself and putting yourself as a priority all the time that you're like, well, this person should have done this. And okay, you're not doing it. So this is why you got to know that you deserve it, and that if people don't like it, it's perfectly fine. It is what it is. Now, also, I think this is number 6. Yeah, number 6. So when it comes to like nurturing relationships, right? There's this desire to nurture and strengthen relationships that leads you to prioritize other people. Whether it's within your family, whether it's dynamics of a friendship, whether it's at work. And there's this bizarre belief system that you have that sacrificing your personal needs fosters a stronger connection with other people. And no, you might think it does, but no, it really doesn't. Because at the end of the day, how can it strengthen something that you're going to have expectations to? How can it strengthen something that you're going to end up getting upset about because somebody's not doing the same? How does that strengthen it? Like, that's not going to happen, right? Like if you're constantly, let's say you have siblings. I don't know. Let's say siblings are going through something. If you're constantly prioritizing their needs, believing that your sacrifices contribute to a stronger family bond, that's not real. That's fake. You're basically saying you have the power to create a better relationship all by yourself. Well, guess what? If you keep prioritizing their needs, you're going to keep doing that. How is that fostering a healthy relationship? It's not. It's not. If I do this, then they'll do this. Essentially, you're saying I'm going to beg for their love. I want you to think about that. Essentially, you're saying I'm going to beg for their love. I have to do this in order to be valued. No. If you need to prove your value, then they are not the people you want in your life. And I don't care if they're a relative. I don't care if they're an adult child. If you have to constantly go down this road of proving yourself and showing, hey, I can sacrifice myself and look at me, you can always rely on me. That's not okay. That's not all right. And it's creating a pattern, and it's going to be a secular pattern that you're going to repeat and carry throughout your entire life. And you have the power of choosing to not do this. All right, so let's talk about number 7. You have this fear of confrontation. Yep, fear of confrontation will, in your mind, you think if I'm not confronting it, I'm doing good. So if you're avoiding conflict and confrontation, right? it's a real easy motivator to put other people's needs in front. Hey, listen, if I just do this, oh my God, it'd just be so much easier. I don't have to deal with it. I don't have to engage in it. Everybody's happy. No, everybody's not happy. And now you're walking on eggshells. When you have a fear of confrontation, you're constantly tippy-toeing on eggshells. You're tippy-toeing on eggshells. And you can't do that. Okay? This is so, so important. And that's why the boundaries are important. So like if you avoid expressing your true feelings, right? Your feelings aren't facts, but they're true feelings in any relationship to prevent some weird level of conflict, choosing to go along with your other partner, how is that a relationship? How's that a relationship? It's not. You're kind of like a puppet, right? Really think about that. And the more that you think that you're all this virtuous because you're putting all of these people in front of you, the more that you keep doing that, the more that you keep saying, I am absolutely worthless unless you give me validation that I have worth. And you have worth. You're a human being. You absolutely have worth. Everybody may not see that because they can't see their own worth. When somebody can't see their own worth, how the hell do you expect them to see your worth? That's never going to happen. So these are the reasons. These are there's a few more, but there's 7. These are the main 7 reasons that people continuously put other people in front of them. But no one is supposed to put you as their priority. You have to be your priority. Then you're not seeking everybody else to fill a void. If you keep saying, well, if I do this, then it's like people who buy people things like all the time. I don't mean like the holidays or birthdays and things. No, but if you're constantly like trying to, like, even parents, like you see some parents, some parents that, let's say they come from money, they have some wealth to them and they're just not around, but they're like, you know what, if I just throw money at it, it'll be fine. Sure, they have a nice car. Sure, they have a nice house. Sure, their education's paid for, but they're still lacking things, right? So the person who's lacking now goes, well, I don't want the person's money so much. I mean, it's fine. Give it to me. It's great. But I also want their attention. So now you start trying to bend over backwards, right? To try to get them to give you attention. So you're going to try to do a better grade in school. You're going to try to follow a path for them because that's going to somehow or another give you validation of who you are. Why? They have demonstrated to you that they do not have this capacity or the capability of giving you anything. I know it sucks. I know it's terrible, but you have to understand that. So instead, you sacrifice your own self because you're still seeking somebody else's love and void. Now we know that comes from attachment, anxious attachment, codependency. We understand this, but it will also prevent you from always putting yourself as a priority because you're going to be like, well, I need other people to love me. No, you do not. Oh, no. Yeah. As humans, we need people. We need human interaction. Cool. But what you need is you need yourself to love you. And that means that you're willing to make people upset on not on purpose, on accident, or not even accident, unintentionally. If putting yourself as a priority makes someone angry, then baby, they are not your people. If you being your priority irritates somebody else, you don't want them in your space. You want somebody in your life who can cheerlead for you, who can talk highly of you when you're in a room that you're not in, that you can know that I'm going to call them and they're going to celebrate me. They're going to celebrate the fact that I'm not going to go because I want to go on this meditative retreat. They are not going to be upset with me because I'm prioritizing myself to know who I am, to know what I like, to know what I want. Those are the people you want in your life. And if you don't have those people, then it's much better to be alone right now. Because that means that you have to foster and nurture who you are. Nurturing the relationships that you keep seeking has to be done within self first. You have to nurture the relationship with yourself first and foremost. Because if you're not doing that, it's going to become problematic. And then you're always going to be chasing what can make me happy. But at the end of the day, it's going to come back to you. You have to be your first priority. You have to be the person that says, this is what I need, and I'm not sacrificing this at the cost of somebody else. I'm not doing it. So this is what, or I guess I said that wrong. Like, you're not going to do what they want you to do at the cost of sacrificing yourself. Don't do that. Okay. So if this is where you've been and this is what you've been doing in the past, we're going to stop and we're going to start being priority number 1. If they call you selfish, be selfish. If they call you extra, be extra. But at the end of the day, you deserve it and you're capable of having it.